Hey guys, still in Washington, D.C. Wanted to give you a weekly wrap-up, but I can't because things are still moving. So let me just kind of give you an update on what's going on. We started this week really talking about the border, but the border is wrapped into something much bigger. The border was a portion of a bigger bill which dealt with Ukraine aid, which dealt with Israel aid, which dealt with Indo-Pacific, which was really dealing with Taiwan. And obviously the public spoke very clear about they didn't want the border bill. But when we did our Delta Town Hall meeting this week, which we really appreciate all that participated, we had thousands and thousands of people that joined it. Overwhelmingly, when I asked the question, what the number one issue was, it was about border. And I think sometimes people forget what the process of a bill looks like up here. And I'm not trying to undermine it. I'm just saying that the point of the bill that James Lankford brought to the floor wasn't the bill that was going to be voted on. It was a bill to start the conversation, to get it to the floor, to start the amendment process that then could be maybe conferenced with what the House had passed with H.R. 2. Because if we pass a border bill and the House passed a border bill, which is H.R. 2, then we can choose as chambers to go to conference and we can negotiate the bill and marry them. But our bill that we were trying to negotiate over here, which we actually never really got to the product of actually negotiating other than when it came out of the negotiating that happened in private tables to actually being opened up to the public, which means it's open up to amendments. That process would have been passed here, and then it would have never passed the House, and that's why you assign conferees and you go to conference and you try to negotiate the difference of them. But now we're kind of starting at square one, or actually not starting any place, because there's no path forward for border, but yet we still have to deal with Ukraine. We still have to deal with what's happening in the Indo-Pacific and the aggressive nature that China is playing, and then we have to deal with Hamas, which obviously is a terrorist organization that's attacking our very strong ally in Israel, who is needing our assistance. And so now we have to work on that. And people say, well, why do you have to take all of them together? It's because truthfully there's a lot of people, especially in the Democrat Party, that will not support Israel. And we saw this on the House this week where they tried to pass just the Israel funding and they couldn't pass it. And they have some people that won't support Ukraine, but they would support Israel if it was on board, and people that won't support Israel will support Ukraine. And then Indo-Pacific, we're kind of all agreeing, so we got to do something about China. My point is that there's so many moving parts and there's so much emotion about this. I think facts are important, that we understand the process. The border bill wasn't perfect, but we never had a chance to amend it because the public spoke out and said you didn't want it. The Ukraine, people are upset by it, and you guys have heard me say this multiple times. Ukraine funding is something that I feel very important about because we told Ukraine, and you guys heard me say this, in 1994 when we signed the Budapest Memorandum, if they would give up their nuclear weapons, which they were the second largest arsenal in the world at the time, they'd give up their nuclear weapons, that the United States and all the might behind it would stand up with them in the case they were invaded, specifically by Russia. Now, no one here believes that Putin would have ever invaded Ukraine if Ukraine was a nuclear powerhouse. But we're here today, and the question is, are we still good for our word? Because in 1994, it didn't have an expiration date. I believe as Americans, and I believe as a person, we're only as good as our word. If I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I was raised that you have to do it. Conditions don't matter. You said you were going to do it. And we as the United States said we would be there for them. So how the package moves, I don't know. We're working on it. But guys, understand what we're dealing with and why we have certain processes here. And I do hope that we all breathe and think about what the next move is. I appreciate it. Seriously, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to represent the greatest state in the nation, which is Oklahoma. I never take it for granted. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.